Longhorn fans, Sooner Nation, welcome to episode 160 of the Bevo Podcast, the only podcast exclusively dedicated to covering the greatest rivalry in college football, the University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas. I'm here with my man, Kevin Miller. I am John Whitson. Kevin, it was a Friday night and a complete Saturday full of completely underwhelming college football games. For a brief moment, we will talk about Texas letting it get to a one-score game. But other than that, not one of the games was in doubt. There was much consternation and hand-wringing across social media on how bad the College Football Playoff Committee got it wrong. Largely through the first three games, questioning why we didn't see the likes of Alabama, South Carolina. Lane Kiffin chimed in to make you say, well, should we have seen Mississippi? Only to see the Tennessee Volunteers take the absolute similar thrashing that SMU and Indiana did. And it really just put a bow on what was a fascinating weekend of college football, what was a cool weekend of college football, especially with the home games, to unless you're a fan of the Texas Longhorns, Penn State Nittany Lions, Notre Dame, Fighting Irish. I was thinking Golden Domers for some reason. I don't know why my brain went off on a tangent. Or the Ohio State Buckeyes. It was kind of lackluster. Am I wrong, Kevin? Am I being a Grinch?
No, not at all. I mean, it was fun just to see home games for a college football playoff. But yeah, none of the games really delivered. Texas and Clemson was entertaining, right? Just because Clemson came out and scored first, Texas fought back. Looks like they were going to run away with it. Clemson comes back to make it interesting. So that was by far the most entertaining of a football game. But the rest of them were pretty much duds, man. Pretty much duds. And the home teams just controlled all four games.
With Texas, which is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. We'll hit a little bit. If you're an OU fan and you're listening in, we're going to hit a little bit on the tail end of the podcast, talk a little stuff that's developed since our last episode. But with Texas, Kevin, I know they cut it close, but with the way you were running the ball and dominating them in the trenches, did you ever really feel like you were losing after you scored to even the game at 7-7?
Well, I wasn't sure yet because they went down the field so easily on their first drive. So, you had to think that they had a really good script. You have to wonder, right? We hadn't seen a team really go straight down the field all season on the first drive and score a touchdown with that kind of ease. So, it just got me a little unsettled in the beginning, but I felt really good after that drive to go down and tie it. Once we got a stop, or once we went up 14-7, I felt really good about it.
The Clemson drive was really, really interesting to follow because it took 7 minutes off the clock. There weren't a lot of busts, but Clemson was just really efficient in their play calls. And Klubnik was really efficient in his decisions. And he took what y'all gave him on that first drive, made a couple of tight window plays. But for the most part, it was like, wow, if they're able to do this and keep the ball out of your hands, and in your case, Texas's hands, it's like, well, man, this could be a ball game. But as soon as they did that, you responded. And this is what Oklahoma fan, it's what we hate about Sark, maybe more than anything else, is when he's in his bag, he might be the best play caller in the country.
Yeah.
And that drive he had to respond to the opening touchdown, it was grotesque in its creativity.
It was awesome, man.
It was
it had
it
everything you
was
could ask for.
it was revolting in its exquisiteness. It goes back to everything I hated about Oklahoma's offense this year was the simple plays that were being made on that drive. And as a non-knowledgeable football fan, you just sit here going, Clemson's defense can't be this bad. That guys are running wide open in seemingly very simple concepts. And that's what I saw in that very first drive. And it's like, man, if Sark can do this to Clemson, they might be able to hang, but they won't hang very long. And they really didn't. I know they had a little bit of a run, but I don't know. Does that make sense though? Like what Sark was able to do?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, and we kind of talked about this in the preview episode, right? That Cade Klubnik was going to be the best quarterback Texas had faced all year. This Clemson offense would be the best that Texas has faced all season long. But we knew our defense would do enough to at least get stops because that's what they do. And that Clemson's defense would not be able to stop Texas enough. Everything that sometimes, we get caught in the recency bias. So you look at what Georgia's able to do to Texas, but really that's it. They're the only team that can really handle Texas like that. Texas has been able to run the ball on everybody else. I knew Clemson would not be able to stop Texas' running game. And once they established the run on that first drive, you could see that there was pretty much nothing that they'd be able to do to slow it down. And that first drive just showed you everything we needed to see.
292 yards rushing.
292 yards rushing.
I think if you'd have told me Texas had north of 175, you win the game. 292. Right. I'm surprised it's this close.
Yeah, I was expecting around between 175 and 200, but it was even better than I anticipated. And the offensive line, I think you could tell that they got challenged a bit after that Georgia game, because to come out on that first drive and completely, just set the tone from a physical standpoint against a good Clemson front, right? They've got dudes like TJ Parker's an NFL dude. Peter Woods is absolutely an NFL guy, and just to go right at them and just kind of push them off the line right on that first drive, it just really set the tone. And yeah, man, it just really motivated the team and really got us going.
Okay, so Clemson does start to make a little bit of run in the third quarter. From what I could tell, I attribute it to Sark outthinking himself, going away a little bit from what was working, and not abandoning the run, but minimizing the run game in the third quarter. I think it got you out of your rhythm. Was he trying to get Quinn going? Was he trying? What was he trying to do besides?
I don't think so. I think Quinn
put them away.
Well, I thought Quinn was great. In the first half, he started off hitting his first 6 passes on that drive. He was accurate. He was in command of the offense. So I don't think so. I think one thing that happened is when the running backs got hurt, when we lost Trey Weiser and we lost 2 offensive linemen on back-to-back plays, I think that kind of changed things. They were able to get 2 or 3 stops in a row when we were primarily running the ball and taking some deep shots because they started to bring a safety up to try to help with the run game, which kind of led to some matchups on the outside. So I think that's really why he kind of went away from the run game a little bit. But you got to give Cade Klubnik some credit, man. He's got 3 very talented receivers: Antonio Williams, TJ Moore, the freshman, was great, and then of course Bryant Westco, who made a couple of plays too. So when you have 3 talented receivers, it just makes it difficult to really key on one guy, and they were able to find a few holes in the zone. He was very accurate, so I give him credit for that.
Yeah, 26 of 43, 336 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. His high receiver, TJ Moore, 9 receptions, 116 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, they've got 2. Those 2 are true freshmen, correct?
Yes, him and Westco are true freshmen.
We know that Dabo is transfer portal adverse. but has Clemson showed any signs of being NIL averse? In other words, will they be able to keep both of these guys, or is this something that could haunt Clemson?
Man, it's hard to tell nowadays what players are actually motivated by. I don't know everybody's motivated by money, but I mean, if Cade Klubnik comes back to Clemson, and if they bring those three guys back, I don't mean Antonio Williams. I think he is draft eligible, but even if you bring back Wesco and more, I mean, you're looking at a pretty salty offense from the skill positions. But you just never know with these guys. And from what I've been hearing, schools have not been as aggressive in the portal yet because they still believe that there are going to be players on these playoff teams that are still going to enter the portal. So no, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if one of those guys were to hit the portal. That's just where we are in college football right now.
Well, in Klubnik's, I don't know why they asked him like in the post game, practically on the field, are you going to be back at Clemson? I don't know. To me, I think it's just a little.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
It's like it's stupid, right? However, they asked, so I'm going to say it. He did not give an answer like, "Oh, I'll be back next year," or he's like, "I'm going to think about it, decide where I'm at, still covering for this loss." Again, I don't like the fact that it's asked, but the fact was it was asked and answered. Is he being a politician there, or do you really think he's just caught up in the loss of the game?
No, I think he's just being smart, do the right thing. Don't. The last thing you want to do, first of all, he's not going to declare for the draft right there on the field. And the last thing you want to do though is say, "I'm definitely coming back," and then a week later declare for the draft.
Right.
So he handled it right. He seems like a really smart kid,
Do you
real
think
sharp
it's more?
too.
Do you think it's more declaration for the draft than it is transfer? You think he's staying there?
I don't
Regardless?
see. Yeah, I would have a hard time seeing him transfer.
Okay.
I think he's always wanted to go there. I don't think he's really NIL driven. I mean, dude went to Westlake, so his family, if you know anything about that area, if he goes to Westlake, he's not looking for money. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure he's looking for it, but he's not in a dire need like
Yeah.
a lot of other players are.
All right. You had injuries. You mentioned a couple of them with Cam Williams. Jake Roberts goes down, kind of with that.
Jake Majors, yeah.
I'm sorry, Jake Majors. I don't know why I wrote Roberts. Jake Majors goes
Because you have a
down.
tight end named Jake Roberts.
That's right. Jake the Snake. Anyway, Jake Majors got lit up on what they referred to as a blindside block on the pass interception that Quinn threw. Thoughts on
Not
the
his
hit?
fault, by the way.
Not
It's
Quinn's
one of
fault.
those
Yeah,
things.
hey, just tell us about the whole play. What were your thoughts? Whole play.
Yeah,
all the way through?
it was a slant to DeAndre Moore, who was open. Quinn hit him right in the hands and just juggled it, flew in the air and intercepted it. And so Jake Majors is there and he turns around, had his head turned and got blown up by one of the defensive linemen. It was a big time hit. It's one of those ones you used to see. It used to be just a regular occurrence on any kind of turnover. You used to see that stuff on pump blocks, but they've taken it out of the game because injuries happen on those things, like we saw with Jake Majors. And it really cost him because I don't think Jake Majors was going to make a play on the ball. That's part of the reason why the flag came out too. He was
Yeah.
He was not going to run down a safety. Our 310-pound center
Right.
was not going to run down R.J. Mickens, and it really cost him because that was a huge play. As far as the injury, I don't know what the diagnosis is. So Sark will have his press conference likely on Monday. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the issue is, and hopefully he can recover because he's a very important player for Texas.
Anything else? Anything on Cam Williams and Trey Wisner? Heard on the
With
same
Cam,
play. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
it was one of the Sark screen as we've seen him do. Quinn starts rolling out, stops, turns back, throws it the other way. The play has not been very successful this year as much as it was last year with Jonathan Brooks catching it. So they tried to run it. Clemson was all over it. And while they were tackling Wisner, Williams tried to push him forward to get a few more yards, ended up getting hit by a defensive lineman, kind of get rolled up on. So he injured his knee. Came off on his own power, missed some time. He tried to come back in the second half, but I only think he lasted a couple plays and had to come out. So I think we'll see what that injury is. Hopefully, it's nothing long term because we've got games left to play.
What about
And
Wisner?
Wisner actually did come back in the game too. Then he also came out, so I'm not sure if he came out because we were still running the ball well with Jaden Blue and with the freshman Jared Gibson, or if he was just injured. He was on the bike a lot. They kept showing him on the bike during the second half. So I'm sure we'll have more of a detailed update tomorrow morning.
Clemson, you hold Clemson to 76 rushing yards, their tailback to 44 rushing yards. We talked about this in the preview show. The strength of Texas's game is on the defensive side of the ball. Listen, you're playing Arizona State. The Scatterbo is the biggest and likely only weapon Arizona State really truly has. Is this pretend for another stellar performance by your defense going up against a back like Scatterbo? Can you take anything from this Clemson game as you go into the quarterfinals?
Well, it was interesting, right? Because this is the first test we had against a really talented quarterback. We play good quarterbacks. Like Diego Pavia is a good quarterback, but he doesn't have 5-star talent like Cade Klubnik has. And he just did a really good job, man. So the combination with a very talented quarterback who's accurate and athletic, he's a true dual threat, and really talented receivers will show that, I don't care how good you are on defense, when you're going up against that many good players, they're going to make plays. Right? I thought our defense did a really good job in the red zone, having two fourth down stops.
But you made them one-dimensional, though. This is my point.
Yeah. We should,
I mean, that's kind of my whole
game.
That's kind of my whole point, right? Is a team at this level, and I would assume as the playoffs go on, if you get shut down running the ball and or throwing it makes it's a hard road to hoe after that.
Yeah, it's hard to win without balance.
Yeah.
And real quick, going back to the actual game itself, I thought Garrett Riley, who did a pretty good job overall, but when they got down in the red zone, I thought them trying to bring in heavy formations, heavy personnel was the dumbest thing he could have done.
Yeah.
If you want to beat Texas in the red zone, you spread them out and make their linebackers have to cover like that, especially on crossers. And, he tried to go heavy. It almost reminded me of what Ohio State tried to do against Michigan. Like you're not going to be able to run it on us. You're not Georgia. Georgia was able to do that, but that's Georgia. It's just a different animal. They have really good players. I mean, they're one of the most talented teams in the country, but it's not Georgia when it comes to in the trenches. So I think by them taking off their spread offense and bringing in a heavier offense in the goal line, I think that played right into Texas' hands. And part of the reason why we stuffed them on fourth down twice when the game was still in reach for them.
I don't know how to answer that though, because it's what we talk about all the time. It's what we talked about with Sark, or at least I brought it up. I felt like he went away from the run. You had some explanations as to why that might not have been the case. But in general, I feel like coaches start to question their own success, right?
Correct.
They're experiencing success with something a la SMU, running the ball, you get up, you stop on fourth down, you run the ball, and then you've had two touchdowns returned for, two interceptions returned for touchdowns, and then you go throw the ball again, and it's like, just do what got you to that
figure
position.
Something out. Yeah.
Well, you don't even have. You figured it out, right? Like you figured it out. You figured out that if we spread and let Cade Klubnik kind of go to work a little bit, we can kind of put Texas on their heels. But to line up and try to run the ball on them, nobody's done that all year. Why do you think? And you hadn't done it to that point in the game. Why do you think you can do it then? It just
it's mind-boggling. Coaches, they constantly are outsmarting themselves all the time, and it's unfortunate. And again, Sark does it too. He does it all the time. Talk about the Washington game from last year. When we come out in the first drive and we're running straight down their throat. And then we threw the ball too much and ended up with over 50 passes. And he'll say, we got down by 2 scores. Like, well, but you're still running the ball well. You can get back in the game if you just just run it down their throat. So,
Uh,
yeah, coordinators, man, play callers.
uh, you talked. You said that you thought Quinn looked great on that first drive, and I agree. But after that, total stats 17 of 24, 202 yards, a touchdown, and interception. Um, is that enough to win a national championship?
If we run the ball, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I have zero doubts in my mind. If he plays like that and we can run the ball, then we can beat any team left on the schedule potentially.
Really? You don't think you don't
Yes.
think you need a little extra out of him?
We got everything we needed from
You're going
him
up against
yesterday.
Oregon. You're going up against Oregon.
Oregon cannot stop the run. Penn State ran for 295 against them. And that's with very little threat of a passing game.
When was
Saw
you
what
play
JT
Oregon?
did.
You play Oregon in the semis?
If Texas handles their business against Arizona State, it will line up a matchup against either Oregon or Ohio State in Jerry World.
Do you think Oregon is a better matchup? I know that's kind of off the wall, but do you think it's a better matchup for y'all than Ohio State?
Yes.
Or not? Yeah. For some reason,
I
I do
think
too.
just because of their defense, the defensive line, they have not held up against the run this year. We saw what Genty did to them.
Oregon,
Correct.
Yeah.
Oregon's defense
Right.
has not held up against the run like we expected this year. They've given us some big time rushing performances, including just last week. I really want to see how they handle Ohio State. And of course, we'll get into their game, but I just want to see defensively how they handle Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, which should just be just tremendous atmosphere, and we still get the old Big Ten, Pac-10 matchup, which is great
real
for
quick,
old guys like us.
let's talk about the other games, and then we'll circle back, give some final thoughts on this Texas win over Clemson. Kevin, in our picks, you had Texas. That was a win for you, loss for me. We both had Notre Dame, win-win. We both had SMU, not a win. Penn State won that, loss. And
I
then
know,
you
and
had
I feel dumb because I had Penn State winning, just not covering.
Ohio State. I had Tennessee, win for you, loss for me. You are over 500. Have you been over 500 this year?
Never more than a game, I believe.
Okay, you are a game over. You are 40, 39, and 1. So this winning week has gotten you over 500. I am at 36, 43, and 1. So not doing nearly as well as you are. Let's start. I don't even know where to. We're not breaking these games down like into minuscule rushing stats and stuff, but I do want to talk about just kind of the overall general perceptions of each game. Notre Dame, Indiana. What did I text you with like 4 minutes to go in the first quarter?
Oh man, let me pull that up because we text a lot during games. Hold on.
I texted you one word.
Hold on, pulling this up. Trenches. We talked about it on if you watched the preview episode, then you heard that from both of us.
That's all this game was. That's
Yeah.
all this game
And
was.
We knew what Indiana had from a skill position standpoint. We've seen it all year. And we knew that Indiana had statistically a really good run defense. But Notre Dame was a different animal when it comes to talent. And as we saw, they couldn't handle them in the trenches at all on either side.
To me, it was. I thought Notre Dame was going to be able to run on Indiana. I thought Indiana might pass block a little better. I thought their offense would be able to buy their quarterback a little more time, create some holes. Maybe there'd be some creativity that would keep Notre Dame either off balance or use their speed against them, or something. There was none of that, Kevin. Notre Dame they were bull rushing with 4, and it wasn't that Indiana had 0 in the tank to be able to stop them.
And they did. I thought they schemed up a couple of decent pass plays, and the quarterback was just off. He's just missing guys.
Yeah.
From the jump, I thought they had a decent game plan on some quick, across the middle stuff. against man coverage, and the quarterback's hitting the ground, and he's throwing behind guys, he's throwing over. They just didn't handle, first of all, Notre Dame's front. And kind of like the coach had mentioned, the way they struggled against Ohio State, handling the atmosphere. I don't think they handled the atmosphere of Notre Dame Stadium well at all.
Clearly not. And the thing is, it might be a 10-point score. It wasn't a 10-point game.
Oh, that was a blowout. Yeah, that game was a blowout. It was an absolute beatdown.
And
I'm sure Marcus Freeman, it gives him some coaching points on how to finish the game, which is good. Sometimes you blow out a team and, team kind of takes it easy because, hey, you just blew them out. We don't need to fix anything. But I think letting them score those 2 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter will give him something to really coach up. But, yeah, Notre Dame, 193 yards rushing.
I did not think Indiana deserved to be on the field with them. And this is not what the playoff committee, whatever that decision was, is neither here nor there. Indiana played Notre Dame. And I don't think Indiana, they were not in the same class as Notre Dame athletically and physically. It just wasn't the case.
No.
Conversely, I'm going to compare and contrast this to the Penn State SMU game. Kevin, this was a bigger blowout. I understand that Penn State beat them down. Okay? And I am not SMU fan. However, I'm going to make the argument that unlike Indiana, at least through the first half, SMU made so many stupid mistakes. And maybe they weren't ready for the moment. Maybe their coaches weren't ready for the moment. Maybe their players weren't ready for the moment. I still contend, even after watching the game, that SMU deserved to be on the field physically and athletically with Penn State. But my God, they could not handle the moment, and they made one bad mistake after the other.
Yeah, man, it was really tough for them. I thought they had a decent game plan. Their first drive was really well. They get the first 4th down in Penn State territory. They decide to go for it. They run the naked bootleg with the quarterback, Kevin Jennings, who we both really like. And he has enough room to run for the first down, but you see the tight end breaking open. So he has a really quick release and throws it to the tight end who's open, but throws it behind him.
Yep.
Tight end tries to catch it, gets hit by the safety, incomplete pass. And you end up with nothing there, which, man, that was devastating. I'm just wondering if he would have scored the touchdown, just what it would have done for their psyche, and more importantly, to Penn State's psyche, taking that crowd out of it. Because we know how those whiteouts are.
Hey,
Stadium's very loud.
I question the Penn State environment just because they haven't been good against ranked teams. That was a hell of an environment on Saturday. It was probably the best environment, right? We saw.
Man, I thought all the home games.
They really were cool.
I was impressed with everybody.
Yeah,
this weekend. But it was awesome to see.
Anyway, Penn State's offense wasn't doing anything, dude.
No, nothing.
They weren't domineering. They weren't doing anything like what you saw Notre Dame do to Indiana, right? They weren't just pushing them around and blowing them off the ball. None of that was happening. It was a very even matchup. And Penn State wasn't able to do anything. And then you throw 3 touchdowns and 2 pick sixes in the next 4 possessions.
Yeah, I mean, it's 14-0, and Penn State had done nothing offensive.
I don't even know that they had 2 first downs at the point.
Correct. And 2 defensive touchdowns. It's just like, man, this is just getting bad. Going from bad to worse.
But then, Kevin, James Franklin does the inexplicable and goes for it, like on his own 20.
His own 20.
To try to pick up a 4th and 1?
I think it was 4th and 1. Might have even been 4th and 2. I think it was a long one.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. And doesn't pick it up again because SMU wasn't getting pushed around. They don't pick it up. SMU has 3 straight running plays, pick up a 2nd and goal from the 8, and your quarterback has thrown 2 pick sixes at this point.
Correct.
And you're running the ball on them. And you have a potential to cut the lead in half and really get to a point where the 2 interceptions are kind of
don't matter.
balanced. Yeah, kind of balanced out, right? And no, you decide to call another play for him to throw it again, and he makes a bad play, and it's returned for a touchdown, or not returned, but it was a long return or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah.
it was at that point you knew it was over. You can't overcome that. Maybe you overcome the first two, but you can't overcome that. Penn State, the score is going to look like they were a dominating Big Ten team over a lowly ACC team. I don't think that was the entire story. The self-inflicted wounds by SMU were just too costly.
Correct. And, you kind of feel for Kevin Jennings. You just never want to see anybody have that bad of a game in that moment. And of course, I think Brett Lashley talked about it in his press conference, that he knows that people are going to be questioning if they actually belong, but, he felt like we, deserve to be here and we didn't get outclassed, even though, the score looked the way it did. And I have to agree with them, right? I don't think, like you said, they didn't get pushed around. I thought the defense played well. The offense, like you said, just couldn't get out of their own way. And when you have 3 interceptions, 2 of them returned for touchdowns, I don't care who you're playing against. That's just not a success for winning football games. Also, though, SMU really struggling to run the football. Finished with 36 attempts for 58 yards rushing.
Jeez. Well, maybe
not
they got
going to
pushed
get
around
it
a little
done.
bit. Maybe they got pushed around a little bit. After all that analysis, you throw that out there. Now I think they got pushed around.
Well, their defense didn't get pushed around.
I didn't think so.
Like Indiana's defense got pushed around. And then the Penn State has dudes, right? They don't have Ohio State level, Texas level, Georgia level dudes, but they have dudes, especially on defense, and they're able to start to get pressure on Jennings, which kind of led to some errant throws and a couple of those interceptions. So we'll see. I'm excited about this going forward, Penn State and Boise.
Okay, so through the Notre Dame game, through the Penn State game, the biggest argument was, why didn't we see Alabama and maybe Ole Miss? Lane Kiffin tried to insert himself in the conversation. Joel clapped back at him pretty hard, but
he really did.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So then you expect to see, and I picked Tennessee to win. Okay, I think you didn't pick them to win.
No, I had Ohio State. Yeah,
you had Ohio State. I picked Tennessee to win. I thought that their defense was going to step up. They're a dynamic front, but we talked about, and I did bring it up, that Nico and Heupel's offense can go into just periods of complete ineptitude. And that's exactly what happened. Like, now, that being said, Tennessee's defense didn't help them either, right? Tennessee's defense did not help them either. But when it became evident that it was going to be a shootout, Tennessee was ill-equipped to participate in that shootout. Would you agree with that? Like, once their defense let them down, okay, that's one thing. And maybe if you're a Tennessee fan, I'm sure you have your own thoughts. I'm just saying what I saw. Once your defense said, we're not stopping them, Tennessee's offense was like, well, we're not scoring. So it was that. Ohio State beat the crap out of him.
It was a nightmare game. It was a nightmare for Tennessee. And from the jump, and we kind of talked about this in a preview episode, my thoughts was that Ohio State is going to be so frustrated about the way they played against Michigan. And their game plan is like, no, what are we doing? We've got talented athletes all over the field at the skill positions. Get them the ball and let them work. Let them work. You mentioned that Jeremiah Smith, 6 catches, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Emeka Egbuka, 5 catches for 81 yards. The running game, Travion Henderson, 10 carries for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. What are we talking about? 156 yards rushing for the Buckeyes. Dylan Sampson, was he hurt, by the way?
If this was the preseason or like an early season game, I would have said he was out of shape.
2 carries for 6 yards. Nothing about that makes sense. I know you're down. Nico with 20 carries for 47 yards. Peyton Lewis, 10 for 77 for the Vols, including a 26-yarder.
Heupel said it was a hamstring injury.
That's disappointing. That's disappointing. But I don't know, man, if it would have mattered. Ohio State was so fired up. I mean, for them to go right down the field and get a touchdown, especially a deep shot to your guy Jeremiah Smith. I mean, that place, they went nuts, man. You could tell that
Well,
all they had heard is how much they suck, how
but
overrated they were.
to me, it was the 3-and-out on the very next drive, though. Like, it was one thing to go down. It was one thing to go down there and score, and I agree. It's another thing to go down and score, and then you back it right up with a 3-and-out, and then you score again, and that you're just like you're down 14-0 on the road against a team as good as Ohio State.
You're in trouble. You're
in trouble. You're in trouble, and you have
Especially
no
with that
momentum.
crowd. I mean, everybody was fired up. It kind of reminded me. Remember how I mentioned this? We talked about this a lot. The Red River Shootout last year. Just how fired up you guys were from the jump.
Yeah.
Your hair was on fire. That's how Ohio State was. And they just swarmed them in Tennessee before they even got into the flow of the game. You're down 3 scores.
Look, I don't know what this means for the SEC, Kevin. I don't know because let's face it, Tennessee beat Alabama. Okay, so Tennessee beats Alabama. Alabama also loses to Vanderbilt and a 6-6 Oklahoma team, 24-3. Ole Miss loses to Florida, but more importantly, loses to Kentucky. I don't know. Does this effectively shut up the ACC naysayers and all the crap they were giving the committee through 3 games?
I think so, man. I mean, first of all, I don't even know how you make an argument for Alabama with those losses, honestly.
Agreed. I completely
for
agree.
me, they were never even, and I know the committee said that they were the first team out or whatever. To me, they belong nowhere near this playoff. I think you have a better argument for it. It's just going by the eye test, right? I don't feel like South Carolina's better than even Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss beat them, but at the end of the season, I felt like South Carolina was the most dangerous team of the SEC that didn't make the playoff. But Alabama, to me, they weren't even in the discussion. I really like South Carolina, the way that they were finishing the season. I think they would have been a dangerous team in this playoff. But yeah, just a bad look for, especially with the SEC homers, who just think, their teams are better. That was embarrassing for Tennessee. And they got pushed around. Yeah.
Ohio State. The big bad SEC was out physicaled by Ohio State.
I think one thing we have to remember, we talked about the prisoner of the moment stuff. Ohio State has the number 1 defense in the country, John.
Yeah.
In the country. And this Tennessee offense, it just hasn't been their year from a passing game standpoint. The running game has been great. But the Sampson being injured, I mean, and I don't think we heard about the injury. I don't remember it during the broadcast. I mean, without him being healthy, they had no chance because they cannot rely on their passing game. It just hasn't been there all season. You put 3 safeties on the field, which is exactly what Ohio State did because everybody done that. You guys probably started that, running 3 safeties against their deep, and it takes away their deep shots. They like to run the deep over. They like to run the deep post and the go route and the 3 safeties. It's not there. And Nico right now, I don't think they trust him to really work the middle of the field, the intermediate stuff, because that stuff has not been in the offense at all. It was there a couple years ago with their quarterback. I can't think of the kid's name. Not Joe Milton, but the one they had before that. He was able to do that a lot better. But I guess they don't trust Nico with that stuff yet because it just wasn't there. I still like his future, but they're going to have to tweak some things with that offense to really get going next year.
A 10-win season. They were preseason ranked 14th.
Yeah, really good season.
Outside of the top 12, make it into the college football playoff with a true redshirt freshman quarterback. I think Tennessee's okay. They're going to recover and everything, but this year Josh Heupel needs to kind of open his eyes to his offense because I think to an extent the code's been cracked, right? And the blueprint's there. We've seen it now too many times. We've seen it with Oklahoma. We saw even Alabama when they played them.
Georgia too.
Georgia, Arkansas, now Ohio State. All right. let's fast forward a little bit here. So I want to talk a little bit about something that I was just doing the math on when we jumped on. Okay. So it's been 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending on who played in a conference championship game, of teams that played this past weekend. Okay. So Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, and Ohio State played 2 or 3 weeks ago. Okay. Now they played this week and they will play again in 10 or 11 days because some people will play on the one game's on the 31st.
Yeah, Penn
The
State and
Fiesta,
Boise State. Yeah,
yeah,
Fiesta Bowl.
the Fiesta Bowl's on the 31st. Okay. So it's why I'm saying 25, 26 days. Let's say 25 days. Some of the teams will not have played in 25 days. Now, you talked about it, and I disagreed with you. I said, you do not want to risk losing a game. Seeing how the weekend played out, does this validate your thought process that hosting and building momentum off of a home game could be a really, really good thing in these playoffs?
I think so, man. And I think so.
Yeah,
And that's just what I saw.
Hold up. Let me add a caveat. Because this would have been my concern going in. Even with injuries to potentially right tackle Cam Williams, running back Trey Wisner, center Jake Majors. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'll still, obviously, not knowing we're going to lose 3 guys potentially going forward. But yeah, I just love having momentum going to, and just being able to host a playoff game. That environment at DKR was unreal yesterday. I mean, yeah, I'd heard some people in the media just saying, I'm curious if Ohio State and Texas will have everybody full with the students being gone already, being Christmas weekend. And I mean, both those stadiums were overflowing with fans, and the atmosphere was just something we had never seen before. So I thought it was a special moment for college football. I know the games were not great, and I feel like, man, we've just got some really good momentum. We got into a really good rhythm offensively. And we'll see if Arizona State and just these other teams, Oregon, Boise, and Georgia, what kind of rhythm that they look at. It's going to take them a while to get into the flow of a game after being out for so long, especially offensively. Or they're going to be a step slow defensively. I know they'll be fresh, but, being physical, getting pushed around, it's a little bit different when you've had that long of a layoff. So I'm just curious to see how that works. But I feel good about where we are as a Texas fan.
I didn't play football. But man, I would imagine the feeling of getting hit fades pretty quickly. And when you get hit again, it's kind of shocking to the system. In other words, a 25-day layoff, it seems like that's just too long from the standpoint of just acclimating yourself to the speed and the physicality of a football game when the other teams are playing intermittent of that.
Yeah, it does, right? It's kind of like now, I will say the schedule that Georgia and the other teams that have buys are on is typical to the traditional bowl schedule,
Right.
right? But usually everybody's on that same schedule. That's the difference. So yeah, I'm curious to see how that works, right? And I think it could get tricky. And I think some of these teams that had a bye could find themselves down a score or two before they really get into the flow of the game. And hopefully those teams are equipped to come back, because I can definitely see that happening.
Okay. So they play, let's just go with the first. And then are their next games the 11th? Is it another 10?
Yeah. Okay. So here's how it is. Let me put this up on the screen real quick. Give me 1 second. But I'll just go ahead and explain it. So again, the Fiesta Bowl, December 31st, New Year's Eve, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, is Penn State and Boise State. Winner of that game will play in the Capital One Orange Bowl, which will be January 9th. And of course, they'll play the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia. And they play New Year's night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern time, so 7:45.
You said January 9th?
January 9th. It'll be the Orange Bowl for the
that's
semifinal.
a Thursday. That's a Thursday. Okay.
Yeah. And then the next semifinal is going to be in Jerry World, and that's going to be on January 10th.
Okay.
And we'll have the winner of Arizona State and Texas against the winner of Ohio State and Oregon.
All right, let's just look at the number of days.
I'm not sure if this is visible. I might find a better one.
So it's 8 or 9 days.
Yeah.
So that's not too bad.
No, it's not. It's not. But this is crazy, man. Just it's so new. This 12-team playoff. So, everybody is getting up in arms about things right now. I'm just trying to see how it all plays out, and then we can kind of go back, and I'm sure there'll be adjustments. Like, I don't feel like a team like Boise State should have a first round bye.
Right.
Personally, same with Arizona State. Good football teams. I don't think winning a certain conference should earn you a bye, and I think they'll change that. I think I get the guaranteed berth into the playoff, but to see
Yeah.
like the 17th ranked team, or 13th ranked team in the country get a bye over the second ranked team in the country, it's
Yeah.
a little interesting. So I think they'll fix that.
It would have been interesting to see if you would have had Notre Dame and Texas in at 3 and 4, right?
Yeah.
And Boise have to play Clemson. And who would have been ASU having to play SMU.
Yeah.
Like that would have created you would think some closer matchups.
Agreed.
which is what you kind of want to see. You hope that doesn't mean you're going to have weaker matchups in the quarterfinals, but all right. Well, listen, I wish the games were just a hair better, but I think it was a success. And I think it's a success for the college football playoff. All the favorites won. All the home teams won.
Right.
I mean, that means that the teams that they ranked ahead of them were better than the teams they ranked below them. Now, could people get in? Sure. Yeah, South Carolina would have played better than Indiana. That to me is like the one spot. SMU lost the game on their own selves. Like I keep coming back to that. They didn't get. They deserve to be there. They athletically deserve to be there. You can't throw the ball to the other team. Like, and I don't know putting Ole Miss in there solves the problem of a team laying an egg.
Completely agree.
Right? So,
completely agree.
All right.
But hey, let me just say this: Texas, winning a college football playoff game, love it.
It feels good. Oh, you
it does,
college
man.
Football play game.
What's that?
It feels good. I said we've never won one. Been to 4, never won one.
Never would have thought that. Honestly, Texas would have won a playoff game before Oklahoma, just given where the two programs were when the college football playoff system started. Just never saw that coming. So I'm happy to be where we are. I'm just definitely trying to enjoy these times because, as we know as fans, things can change and they can change very quickly.
Real quick, some OU nuggets before we close out for the night. Kevin and I have a football game to watch. We're recording this on Sunday night, and Kevin's Dallas Cowboys will be playing my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, in fact, they're probably going right now, but we'll catch it here in a minute. Let's start with the line. So the last time we met was doing the Texas Clemson preview episode, and the OU line at that point was 7.5, which I thought was preposterous and could not understand how that was even in place. The depth chart comes out last Thursday night, and within 6 hours of the depth chart release, the line drops to 4.5. It's now Sunday night, and the line is now 3. OU as a 3-point favorite, which I think is a lot more reasonable. I just don't understand how lines work, Kevin. It's like nothing groundbreaking was released on that depth chart. Is it just coincidental that the depth chart and the depth chart is released and the line comes down on the same within 6 hours of each other?
Yeah, the only sense I can make of it is just knowing for sure that Stutzman and Billy Bowman would not be playing. Had that been announced previously before the depth chart was released?
I know Stutzman had for 100%. He announced it on Twitter.
Okay.
I thought Billy Bowman did as well.
Okay.
Some people acted surprised, like, oh, I didn't know that. But I kind of feel like maybe I just assumed it so hard in my head that I imagined I heard it with Billy Bowman, but I know for sure I heard it with Stutzman. So my point is, it just wasn't shocking news.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I can think of if Vegas confirmed that, or got confirmation. The depth chart confirmed that your two best defensive players would not be going.
Mm-hmm. Listen,
what are you thinking about the game? What do you think about it?
Well, let's talk about the depth chart just for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
I love the depth chart. I was encouraged when I saw the depth chart. Okay, not on the offensive side of the ball, whatever. We'll deal with the offensive side of the ball next year. But in terms of the game, Ethan Downs, PJ Adebawore at defensive end, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, David Stone, defensive tackle, nose tackle Dominic Williams, DeJoun Terry, defensive end R. Mason Thomas, Trace Ford. I mean, let's just start up there. Okay, I know we're playing an option team, and I get that, but that is a very experienced, very talented defensive front.
Agreed.
And we haven't even got to the linebackers yet, but that's a very talented, very experienced defensive front that should be able to handle the assignment football that's required when you play Navy. Okay? Also, if this is any indication of next year's depth chart, which I hope it is, I think OU fans a little concerned about R. Mason Thomas, maybe a little bit about Dominic Williams, although...
Now, real quick, you're concerned with those guys are the NFL draft,
going
right?
to the NFL
Not the
draft.
transfer portal. Okay.
I don't think they're going to the transfer portal. And so, let's just start while we're on the defensive line. If that's the returning defensive line, let's freaking go. There's not one defensive group where I'm like, dude, we got to go to the portal. We need some work. We got to go to the portal. We got to count on this one true freshman to play. Yada, yada. Or these guys better really develop, right? Every person I just listed saw significant playing time, was either a starter or a significant contributor, and all performed what I thought at a very high level.
Let me ask you this. Where are you at on PJ Adebawore so far with his development? What's the word on him? Have you heard? Is the staff happy with where he's at so far? I know the production hasn't really been there, but he was a kid that just kind of had a lot of raw athletic ability more than refined skill. So have you heard anything from some of the insiders on where the staff is with him? Because he's got a lot of talent.
I have not heard anything from insiders. My personal opinion before the season was I wanted to see him over Ethan Downs. I thought Ethan Downs was a good rotational player, but I was ready to see PJ. Ethan Downs ended up having a really solid year. And I'm going to trust the defensive line staff and Zach Alley and Brent Venables that PJ wasn't ready to roll to the extent that we needed him to go. You saw the development with R. Mason Thomas over the year. And so I know that that this staff is capable of developing talent. I just really hope he's a late bloomer and he lives up to the potential that we think he can. Because he came in that same class with Anthony Hill, Jr. at Texas, and they were kind of compared to each other because Anthony Hill was playing edge at the same time. Well, that kid, Anthony Hill, he's gone off the charts. He is such a good football player. And if you said, oh, he's a true sophomore, I don't know that anybody's necessarily believing that.
Yeah. It's crazy with Anthony Hill. He had he's an off-the-ball linebacker. He has 7.5 sacks. They didn't even use him as an edge at all.
Yeah, well, he also led Texas in tackles, 7-2 for loss, or 7 total, 2 solo tackles. But anyway, okay, so that's defensive line. Okay, so then if I go look at the linebackers, because I think that's the concern, we're losing our best player at defense for the last 3 years. And we're replacing him with Kobe McKenzie. Beside him, Kip Lewis, Cheetah, Sammy Omosigo. Okay. Jared Kanek is backing up McKenzie. Lewis Carter backing up Kip Lewis. A little concerned possibly with Sussman. Well, I think there has to be because
I
he's
think the
not.
staff does like Kobe McKenzie, though, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think there has to be some concern because he's not Stutzman.
Yeah.
He's got the physical tools. He's been playing behind Stutzman and developing. He's obviously made the jump over Jaron Kanek, who was the starter last year for a significant amount of time. So I don't know. I think this is one of those areas, and this bowl game, when you're playing a Navy option offense, where you expect your linebackers to shine.
Yeah,
So we're going to be able to
very active.
You're going to be able to see real quick, is Kobe McKenzie up to filling gaps and making tackles, right? You're going to be able to see it because this is a linebacker's dream game, is to let the big heavies clog their spaces, fill their assignments, you chasing.
Yeah, we're talking about one of those 20 tackle games, potentially for a linebacker.
What did Kenneth Murray have against
against Army?
Like 35? I don't think I'm exaggerating. He had like an insane number of tackles.
What would have happened if you guys would have ended up losing that football game? What a bizarre game that was.
Oh, it was so weird. 28 tackles.
Wow, man.
Not 30, not 35. Not 30.
Well, I mean, 28.
It
28 is
like
okay.
It felt like 35. I say this all the time. Best pay-per-view game I ever bought.
Hey, that's one good thing about the as much as we gripe about the ESPN Plus, at least we don't have to pay $60 to watch a football game.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So that's our linebackers. Going into the secondary, Eli Bowen. Okay, check. I'll take him next year. Peyton Bowen. He's not Billy Bowman, but I think we both agree he's really, really talented. He's shown his ability to make plays on the ball.
There. Yeah.
Robert Spears-Jennings was in the running for a period of time to be one of the best safeties in the conference. And then they've got Jacoby starting over Woody Washington. Jacoby got exposed a little bit in the fourth quarter against Missouri.
Yeah.
And I like Jacoby. And it's probably easy to get exposed by Luther Burden and Theo.
Correct. He was going up against some really talented and experienced guys from Missouri.
But I like, you know how we both feel about Eli Bowen. I mean, that kid has had a hell of a year.
He's really good. And remember, right? We thought he was one of those, okay, well, we just offered him because his brother's here. He's pretty good. I don't know if, you guys were ever truly all in, like really pushing for his commitment. I think you accepted his commitment, which you guys better be glad you did, because
that's probably fair,
right? Yeah, and that's not to criticize. Well, every school does that. There's just guys you take more than the guys you want. Like Peyton, obviously everybody in the country wanted Peyton. Eli, it's like, okay, yeah, he's got some ability. He's small though. He's small, but he plays a lot bigger than he is.
Well, I'll just say this. Going into the season, quarterback was a fairly loaded position. This was before Gentry Williams was hurt. Woody was a fifth-year returning senior. You had Des Malone, Kenai Walker, Jacoby, even the other guys that are there. I can't read your screen. Let me see. Yeah, Devon Johnson, Jeremiah Newcomb. There was just other guys there. It was a very loaded room. And the cream rose to the top. He was their best corner by the end of the year. And had some really good games. Look at what he did against Ryan Williams at Alabama. That's all you need to know right there. And he was really, really good. My point in all of this is I look at that defense and I say, you give me that next year and I'll take my chances. I hope we have some development. I hope maybe a transfer portal guy comes in and gives a spark. I hope maybe somebody down on the depth chart has a lot of developmental growth and maybe supplants one of these guys, because that's a good thing to have happen. But if it stayed exactly the same, carbon copy, we're going to battle against Michigan on week 2, and that's my defense, I'm not upset about that. I'm not upset about that.
I wouldn't be either.
Offensive side of the ball, Kevin, I don't even want to talk about it going into Navy. I have no idea what's going to happen. I think it's Did you hear Ben Arbuckle he's not calling the plays, but he will be coaching the quarterbacks, i.e. Michael Hawkins, for the bowl game prep, and at the bowl game.
That's very interesting. I'm curious to see how that works. But why not get him started?
I think it's good investment on Ben Arbuckle's part in Michael Hawkins.
Yeah,
I think
should know it.
I think it's an olive branch to say, I know everybody thinks I'm here because I brought John Mateer, but I'm here to be a coach first. I hope that's what it means. I think that's what it means.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. I also, there is a certain excitement level for me with Xavier Robinson. I want to know, is he the kid we saw the second half against Missouri and the LSU game? I'm sorry, in the Alabama game, or is he the kid we saw in the LSU game?
Yeah.
Like, so if he could go for 100 and a touchdown, I'd be really excited about that. The offensive line, this is going to be the best offensive line we've put together all year. Now, I don't know what that means. Right? I don't know what that's going to work out to. But in terms of who we have available and who we want to play and who we expect to play, this will be the best 5 guys that have been on the field all year.
Okay.
So, and then that takes us, into wide receiver. I don't even know.
Well, Deion Burks being out there helps. If you have Burks out there, just because I think everybody has forgotten what that dude is about, because you haven't seen him since what? I mean, I guess he played in the Missouri game and stuff, but obviously the season's just a wash for him. Just a wash after he got injured.
Well, and it's just, I appreciate him coming back, and I think he could flourish in Arbuckle's offense. I just think, what a waste for him. He thinks he thinks he's leaving Purdue to come to Oklahoma. He thinks he's entering an offensive production seen by the likes of Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb and Mark Clayton and
D.D. Westbrook,
Sterling Shepard and D.D. Westbrook and Ryan Broyles, and instead he gets, I don't even know what he got, a pile of poop.
Yeah, it was a nightmare season offensively for the Sooners for sure.
According to most reports, the offensive staff is expected to stay. Obviously, unless they were to find another position on their own. It doesn't look like any of them were going to be forced out necessarily. Is that good or bad for a Ben Arbuckle-led staff?
I don't know what kind of connections that Arbuckle has. He's such a young guy. Does he have guys that he would want to bring in if he had the choice? Does he have a Rolodex of guys? I would imagine that he does.
I'm pretty sure it's not a Rolodex at 29 years old.
Yeah, seriously. You know what I'm saying? Just a list of guys that he would want to bring in.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think next year is going to be so telling. You guys have to see development from the running back spot. The receivers, you kind of get a pass because everybody was hurt. And you have to rely on guys who just weren't ready. You just shouldn't have ever been out there. But the lack of the true development at running back is what is real concerning for me when it comes to your offense.
What's more glaring? Because I think I agree with you. All right, I agree with you, and I've been on the record. I love DeMarco Murray, but I've been pretty much doing that all year. Okay. However, a lot of folks in Soonerland are super pissed about our tight ends coach.
I understand that too.
Bigger red flag on the team: running back development or tight end development?
For me, it's still running back. Just because what you
had because the ceiling's higher. Because the ceiling's higher on that talent.
Yeah, Gavin Sawchuk, everybody wanted him coming out of high school. Taylor Tatum, true freshman, you just never know what you're going to get from them.
He's still a 5-star. He is a
5-star. He is, but I guess not everybody's Adrian Peterson or even like a Jamal Charles who comes in and just is that guy right away. It just takes certain guys some time making that jump from playing in Longview High School in East Texas to playing in the SEC. You've never been hit by guys that are hitting you.
Yeah.
So it just takes some guys to adjust. And, the Xavier Robinson thing is just kind of weird that, he's a true freshman. So maybe the light just came on close to the Missouri game. Maybe in practice he hasn't showed any of that until later in the season. So I don't know, man. But you would just really hope with these guys' talent. I know Sawchuk's been injured, but he showed flashes his first year, the Florida State game.
He had a good half year in 23.
Yeah.
His back half of the year was good. But it wasn't dynamic. It was good.
No. So I'm just so curious.
Look, dude,
and of course, the offensive line. I mean, what's going to happen there?
Listen, as it relates to DeMarco, I'd like to see him being held accountable. That's what I'd like.
Yeah.
I'd like Brent Venables to hold him accountable specifically. I don't think it even needs to be Ben Arbuckle. It's like, okay, man, you can recruit, check. But can we get these guys in positions to succeed, and can we develop them, and can we see some growth? Javonte Barnes is the same running back he's been for 3 years. I know he's hurt in this game, but he's the same running back he's been for 3 years. And Gavin Sawchuk's fallen into that same boat too. All right.
Correct.
However, my point is as far as tight end coach, Joe John Finley, I think I agree with you. His cupboard's a little less bare, a little more bare in terms of who he has to work with. Devon Mitchell, though, if he doesn't reclassify, he's a 5-star this year.
Correct.
Right? So you recruited at a high level. You have a 5-star recruit. Caden Helms, pretty big time recruit as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think he's a mid 4-star guy.
All right. So I think the problem for Joe John was Brent Venables panicked when Jeff Levy left. Okay? He panics. And he doesn't want to lose the staff. And he thinks that he has to hold the staff together in order to hold players together, i.e. Jackson Arnold. So he hires Seth Luttrell from offensive. He promotes him from offensive analyst. And then in order to further solidify the staff, he says, okay, Joe John, you're going to also be the co-offensive coordinator when it comes to large raise and more responsibilities, whatever those are. And I think that worked to Joe John's detriment.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good tight end coach.
Let him focus on
I think he's a really good tight ends coach. And you know what? Maybe he's a good offensive coordinator. What he did against Alabama was a masterful game plan, and it will never be forgotten. But the rest of it, it's almost a stain. He's almost stained because of how bad Seth Luttrell was.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's like, yeah, Bauer Sharp was not what we wanted him to be. Nobody is sad that Bauer Sharp has left this team. However, he's still the leading receiver.
Correct.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, I would love to know. Answer me the question, who had Bauer Sharp blocking the edges from South Carolina in the first quarter? Now, if that was Joe John Finley's decision, well, then okay. I don't think it was. I think Seth Luttrell was, I don't know what he was doing, right? I really don't. It's really incalculable to try to figure out what that dude was doing. But my point is there a world where Joe John says, you know what? I will accept a position back to tight ends coach. Ben Arbuckle is the offensive coordinator. His quarterback coach can be whatever he is. And I'm going to get this group right. Or do you pass that point once you become a offensive coordinator and he's going to be looking for that role somewhere else?
I don't think so. I think clearly he loves OU. I'd imagine he's really close with Coach Venables. So I could see him being okay. And it's not like I don't think they're gonna demote him from a salary standpoint. So, if you get the same amount if your salary is still the same and you just become the tight ends coach, I need to be the tight end coach. Focus on recruiting. He'll still be in the meetings probably when it comes to the game plan since he's been in there before. But he won't be calling the plays. I think it's better for him. Focus on the tight ends. You got
I
this
think,
Devon Mitchell kid who everybody in the country wanted.
yeah,
Develop him and see what you can get out of him. Make him something special.
I agree. The Bauer Sharp experiment failed miserably, and if to the extent that that's on Joe John, he needs to take the responsibility for whatever that is.
Yeah, and
But outside of
Sharp,
that, I kind of think he was put in a really crappy
yeah, it's a tough
position.
spot. Yeah, and Barrel Sharp, you're relying on a guy coming up from southeastern Louisiana to the SEC. This is a tough jump for anybody to make, and no one expected him to be your leading receiver. Maybe if you have all your other receivers, if you've got Jaleel Farouk and
Nick Anderson, and
Andrell Anthony and Nick Anderson,
yeah,
then he probably has an amazing season. You're not relying on him to be the guy. That's just a
well,
lot
no,
to ask from that guy.
his 40 catches as your fifth receiver look really good.
Correct.
Not 40 catches as your leading receiver. It looks really
Yes.
bad.
Yes. And the fact that LSU still wanted him, that athleticism, it's something there. And if he fits in with LSU's offense, with those kind of receivers that they have,
Oh, I know.
he could end up having a great year. Just hope it doesn't
I
happen
know.
when he comes back to Norman. You
We
just don't
talked.
want. And then, oh my God, Nick Anderson too. I
No,
mean,
I know. I'm with you.
Brendan Thompson was never really a threat, so we weren't really worried about him doing anything against us. But if it was somebody like a Nick Anderson, if we had somebody like that, if Matthew Golden would have transferred.
Ooh,
So, oh
what
my
happened?
God,
What happens if Jackson Arnold decides to wake up?
oh man, it's just a nightmare. That's the thing about this portal, right? You guys transferring within the conference, and yeah, I mean, can you imagine what if a player transferred from OU to Texas and then scores in the Red River Shootout? And if that were to happen, the fans would just go even more crazy than we normally do when a touchdown is scored in that game. Yeah, can you imagine if Brendan Thompson would have scored in the Red River Shootout, especially in 23? Just how
Yeah.
crazy your fans would have been the
Or
first year he
Casey
transfers over.
or Casey Thompson before the year
Yes,
before the game got out of hand last year if he
yeah,
somehow made it in. Yeah.
and scored a touchdown, ran a touchdown in. You guys would have lost your mind. So that's you kind of opening yourself up to with this new version of transfer portal.
I might have lost my mind if anybody scored a touchdown this year against you guys.
Didn't happen much, and hopefully stays that way for the next few weeks, man. I'm trying not to get too excited, but again, I like where we're at because everybody's flawed. Everybody has flaws that could be exposed.
Kevin, last thoughts on Texas Clemson and first thoughts on Texas ASU.
Man, I'm just glad that we won a playoff game. This feels really, really good to say Texas has won a playoff game. It was just a great atmosphere at DKR. The fans brought it, and the team brought it. Shout out to the offensive line for being dominant, and shout out to the running backs for running hard. Jaden Blue, who we've been all over because of his fumbles, but I think he reminded us what he's capable of when he's healthy. On those 2 touchdown runs, Clemson has athletes out there, and he just blew past him. I mean, 77-yard touchdown run against a Clemson defense, and he's just outrunning corners. It almost looked like he was jogging for the last 30 yards of that run. So just really proud of him and really proud of the defense too, right? I thought Cade Clubbing did some really good things for them to bow up and make those 2 stops in the red zone. Yeah, I really like this team. So just glad to get that win. Looking forward, Arizona State. I know we'll take them seriously, even though people are going to say it's a mismatch. You just got to watch the tape of their running back. And they had a pretty good game plan against Iowa State in their last game. I don't know if you watched any of that,
A little
but they
bit.
had some really good calls. I mean, they ran it well and the play action stuff. Problem for them is Jordan Tyson or Jalen Tyson, the receiver, really talented player out of Allen, Texas. He's injured. He has a arm injury, and I don't think he's going to play. I'm pretty
Really.
sure he's going to be out.
Even in
Yeah,
25 days, he couldn't recover.
I think I think it's a pretty bad injury. I think it's
Oh, it sucks.
I think it's one of those 4-month things. So not having him is really going to hurt them. So I'm hoping we can really get after them in the trenches as well, like we did against
You know what
Clemson.
my initial comparison in this game, this ASU game, is Oklahoma State and Ollie Gordon last year.
Yeah,
And I think that's kind of who ASU is this year. right?
That's actually a really good comparison.
Yeah, and we saw how that ended up. And I just, I mean, y'all know I'm going to be rooting for the Sun Devils. I mean, Scattybo, are you kidding me? A dude like Scattybo beats Texas, it would be
It would be
fantastic.
insane.
I
Yeah.
would, I would
Mhm.
die.
The whole nation
I,
would celebrate that. Come
I
on,
just
man.
don't. I just don't know where. I don't know how it happens though. Listen. Give me 10 days, I guess, before we do the preview, or however many until we do the preview to figure it out. But right now, right after that, after you hold Clemson to 76 total rushing yards, and last year you held Ollie Gordon to 33 rushing yards. That I don't know, man. I just don't know.
Yeah, I hope we can get after the quarterback and Levitt. He's a talented guy, but yeah, I think we can get after them. And if our offense is in rhythm like this, it could be a long day for the Sun Devils, and that's what we're certainly hoping for.
Kevin, it is 8:34. Let's go finish the Dallas Tampa Bay game. We will have an Oklahoma preview for the Armed Forces Bowl later this week. We'll work it in around Christmas, sometime before, sometime after. It's just going to be dependent upon when Santa Claus comes at each of our houses. But after that, we will work it out. We'll have a preview there. We'll recap it just like we do with every game. And then we'll be back with the Texas preview for the college football playoff. Kevin, have a great night. Boomer.
Hook 'em.